Hello. Wow, I really look like I just woke up. Because I kind of did. Okay. Let's get this going. Here we go.
Hey,
Well, that was easy and quick.
I've done a few of these with people who I was helping out with money during COVID-19, so I kind of got used to how to like be found.
I'm like, I'm just navigating this. I was not good at lives until maybe yesterday. So
Well, you're doing a good job.
thank you for chatting.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure actually. First of all, um, you had asked me what I wanted to talk about, so I was like sitting in the house, like, what should we talk about, right? And I think first things first, your followers obviously wouldn't know who I am more than likely. So I guess I'll give a little bit of my background, and it'll help you and I have a conversation too, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So my background is in writing and marketing. I have an MBA from NYU and I own a marketing agency. But most importantly, I'd say recently, people know me for certain things like the Black Panther Challenge, where we took hundreds of thousands of kids to see Black Panther for free. And also, most recently, Rent Relief, where we donated nearly $500,000 to people during COVID-19 who were having trouble paying their bills. So just trying to do that type of work. And, upcoming soon, I actually have a book coming out called The Black Friend. It's a young adults book on white supremacy and microaggressions and things like that to help young people learn how to be better people in relation to things like the moment we're in right now.
Yeah. When does that come out?
So that comes out in spring 2021.
Okay.
But it's funny, my editor just actually sent me an email today. She's like, you got to do something in relation to what's happening right now. The book is already written, it's already finished. I'm working on something else.
Mhm.
But it's hard not to talk about this moment in terms of police brutality, this moment in terms of anti-blackness, things of that nature. And
Mhm.
the reality though is that this is not the book that I ever wanted to write first, right? Like I'm like a big Harry Potter fan and
Sure.
Lord of the Rings guy. So I
Yeah.
always thought my first book would be like some big epic fantasy.
Uh-huh.
Um, but when you're black, a lot of times you have to do what you have to do, not necessarily what you want to do. Um, so this is something that needed to be written, and I hope that people enjoy it.
That's wonderful. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, yeah. So I see that you've been out doing all these amazing things and fighting for, equality and justice and so on and so forth. How's that been?
I went to a protest yesterday. It was really powerful. It was a peaceful protest. It was the LGBTQ community going. We were in West Hollywood. Uh, yeah, really, it was just so powerful, and it felt like such the right thing to do. It just like warmed my heart to see so many people coming together to fight for the same thing, and
Mhm.
tell everyone there is there for the right reason. And it just feels really powerful. Feels it just feels right. It feels good to be doing that. And my friend and I walked home from the protest, holding up our signs, and his sign said "one human race," and my sign said "convict those with blood on them."
Yeah.
And we got a lot of honks from cars on the way when we were driving. Like, yeah, like thanks for supporting us. So it just felt good. It felt good, and I think it feels it feels right and important talking to people right now to be letting you talk about your experience and just to hear what you have to say and let an audience that maybe you otherwise might not be able to reach hear what you have to say. I kind of just want to amplify other people's voices right now because I think that's the important thing that I can do.
Yeah.
So I would love to just have. say, and I'm just like all ears.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about because though, my 30 something thousand Instagram followers are not 20 something million, right? It's still privilege always in relation to somebody else. And it's always an opportunity to learn from other people, right? So, for me, um, I'm always learning in relation to women, for instance, right? Like how to combat patriarchy, and then also the LGBTQ plus community. Being someone who's a cisgendered heterosexual male, there's always learning that we all need to be doing and getting better. So I think that these opportunities, that you're providing are ones that I provide on a much smaller scale, but we all need to be doing it for each other, right? Because that's the only way we can grow and learn, and things of that nature. But I do have a question for you, though. So you have this huge platform, and you're super young. And how does it feel to be someone who, I would imagine that when like a Trayvon Martin happened, you were maybe like a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does it feel now with your platform and all this new privilege, not just white privilege, but celebrity privilege, to see some of your peers not kind of doing the same thing at times?
I guess it feels, I think some people maybe don't think I think you either have a couple things. You have people who are really passionate about it, who are really ready to talk about the issues, and who are really passionate about it. And then you have the people who kind of feel like they have to talk about it. Like they'll do like an Instagram post and be like, okay, people know that I'm not racist now. And then you have the people who don't say there because they don't feel the need to say anything. And I personally, I can't decide that's actually helping things. I don't
Yeah.
think Instagram post can educate people, but I mean, like, there's so many things floating around right now. It's hard to. It doesn't think that way for me. Reading an Instagram post, not a for me. I need
Yeah.
to be boots on the ground at a protest. I need to hear from you, Andrea, as well, and the people that I've talked to already. I need to communicate. I'm not learning anything from an Instagram blackout. So I
Yeah.
think I want to take it a step further and really just what offer an audience or to a white person like me who's just trying to be an ally and do the best that I can with my, I'm like, I have a platform.
Yeah.
That's what I can offer. So please have it.
Yeah. No, and I think that for lack of a better term, that's super dope. It really is this thing where people want instant gratification as opposed to change, or they think that instant gratification is going to equal change. And I don't even think it's just white people. I think a lot of non-black people right now, just in general, need to be focused on how can I support the black community at this moment in time, right? Not just with platforms, but even if you have 2 followers, sharing information could ultimately save someone's life, right? Like we were at a protest the other day, and I saw something I've never seen in my entire life going to protest. As we were walking up to police officers, these white young people ran up to the front to put their physical bodies in front of us, as a way of using their privilege so that, police wouldn't assault us necessarily.
And how did you feel about that? Like, were you?
Yeah, I mean, it gave me hope, honestly. It gave me a little ray of hope because I've been doing this for quite some time, and it gets to feel like you're on an island with the few people who care with you, right? Like, and sometimes there's white people for sure, but there's always this like baseline of misunderstanding. Like before
Sure.
you can even get to protest, you're like, no, it's not all lives matter for these reasons and this and that and the third. And now all of a sudden there's a lot of people like, yeah, we're past that. Jump in front of them, use your privilege, use your physical body, share this, share that, like even in terms of you doing this with your platform, I'm someone who I have very deep relationships with a lot of white celebrities who have large platforms as well. And I've been kind of hurt because I haven't seen them even post anything, right? And these are people who I've sat with, spent time with, and they claim to love, whatever it is that they love in terms of progressive spaces, but not doing anything. But I do think that there's something in the water that's changing, right? Like, I live in a pretty white neighborhood, and I was in the shower, before coming on this, and my fiance right now, she's like, "Oh, they're protesting downstairs." I'm like, "Here?" She's like, "Yeah, the white people are protesting downstairs." She's like, "It's not a lot of them, but they're there."
Yeah.
So I do think that things are changing a bit.
I agree. I think it seems like this was this was a tipping point. I don't know. It just kind of seems like I think we're a generation of people right now who are really fed up with this shit, and we don't want to have to do it again
Yeah.
for this movement. It's Black Lives Matter has been around for a while now. Sort of like we can't keep having the same fight.
Yeah.
Something has to change. So, like for you, what do you hope? What would be like the best thing that could come out of this? Do you think?
I think people staying, well, one, I have like a lofty goal, which I'll say in a second, but I think people have to stay engaged, right? Like, it's not as simple as saying like this is a moment, because we've had moments before, right? We've had maybe not this level of uprising, but when Mike Brown was killed, people went to Ferguson, and when Tamir Rice was killed, and Sandra Bland and Freddie Gray, and so on and so forth, we had moments of protest, looting, fighting, posting online, blackouts, but people fell asleep, frankly, right? And that's also how you got Donald Trump. People fell asleep at the wheel. They weren't paying any attention, and they thought things were fine. And now I think with Donald Trump in office, and I imagine that you're not a Trump supporter, it's just, in this small, but yeah, with Donald Trump in office, and the intersection of both that and what's happening right now and COVID-19,
Yeah.
I think people are just boiling over. And what I hope is that people will have actionable change, right? It's like, it's not enough to say police brutality, hold these officers accountable, because as we're holding these officers accountable, Breonna Taylor, the officers who killed her, are still being paid by our tax dollars, and they're not in jail, right? And as that's going on, we're seeing all these videos of police attacking people all around the country. Like, I've never seen anything like it. So what we need is actual plans of defunding the police, not having them militarized. Like, police have drones flying over protests that are peaceful. Where the fuck did they get drones from?
Right.
What do you hope for?
I mean, yeah, I would say the same thing. There's obviously so much different. I was relieved to see that at least the warrants for those other officers in the George Floyd case, that the warrant was out for their arrest at least. I don't know if they were all actually. Oh no, because I saw their mugshot. Yeah,
Yep.
so no, I was like, okay, that is in the grand scheme of things very small step forward, but it is a step forward. But like we have to obviously be grateful for that, because it wouldn't have happened had people not been doing these protests. But so let's step further, and it's strange, because it's like there are always going to be racist people. You can't. There's no way around that. But finding a way to add justice into our legal system, that I mean it's truly just pure racism that's with a lot of these officers and a lot of these places of government. It's just corrupt, and people are calling this like a revolution, and I think that's such a good way of looking at it, because it's almost like it is a revolution. It feels like we're all gathering together for something big. It feels big to me.
Yeah, no, I think so. And for me, I was a surrogate first for Elizabeth Warren, and I was a surrogate after that for Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And when the two of them dropped out, it broke my heart, because to me, they were our revolution politically, right? But now, I'm like, oh, well, maybe we can still have our revolution. Maybe we can still force change. I think that's a moment like this also forces somebody like a Joe Biden to
Mhm.
move far more progressively left, right? And I think that young people, and I think that's the most important group, are seeing something that is absolutely game changing, right? Like, I do think that there's more. Like, I would have never imagined in a million years if you would ask me a year ago, like, oh, you'll do like a live to talk about white supremacy and just life right now with this like young white woman. You're from like Ohio, correct?
I'm from Ohio, yes.
You're right, from Ohio. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
But this right here, this is how revolutions happen in one of the lanes, right? Like yesterday, no, the day before, I was on the street. Tomorrow, I'll be raising money to help for bail funds. Today, I'm on raising awareness with you, and it has to always be a movement, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yes. So how did you become this person, right? Like so so we were, my fiance had mentioned, like, she's like, oh yes, from Hustlers and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, in Riverdale, and it's like, oh right, and we're just like, oh, she's dope.
Sure.
But like when I did more research into like your activism, how did that come to be?
I've always been a pretty outspoken person. I kind of just felt I've always been so impassioned to speak about that. Usually about things that like piss me off. I'm always like one to talk about it. I'll talk about the fact that I hate Donald Trump. I don't care. I'll tell the world. I fucking hate that guy. I'm gonna talk about it. If it like lights a fire inside of me, I'm gonna talk about it. And it's that's, I guess, when I started talking about mental health, I talk about depression a lot and anxiety and kind of the fact that it's not normalized and the fact that people still there's such a stigma around it and people don't necessarily take you seriously when you talk about your mental health, and the fact that we can talk about the food pyramid cool, but we can't talk about what's going on with your brain. Like, it
Yeah.
just backwards to me. And
Yeah.
it lights a fire in me to talk. And I think there's nothing more important than right now to talk about what right now. Talk about how the fact that I am a white woman who I'm realizing the extent of my privilege, and it makes me feel sorry, my dog is my squeaky toy of all things. Um, I think a lot of us are realizing the extent of our privilege, and just being able to, if one white person can walk away from this going, oh shit, I do have white privilege, like I'm understanding what white privilege is. I think that's a small success. I think
Yeah.
that's important. I think, yeah, yes, small steps. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I hear you. It's interesting because, like I said earlier, there's like a mode or a moment rather that I had to be in around like patriarchy. I remember first hearing about like I always knew that like men's rights and the way we were treated in society was different, but I'm also black, so it's always like a weird thing to process. But when I really started reading certain authors, right, like Toni Morrison and people like that, and like, oh, right, and even seeing, I saw a quote earlier. It was like, if 50 men called a woman a hoe, you would believe them. But if 50 women call a man a rapist, then it's, you have to look into it further. And I'm like,
Oh,
yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it, right? Or even like, for me, the like I said, the LGBTQ community has been something I've focused on. I think that there's not enough people who speak out who are cisgender, heterosexual, fighting for that community, right? And I have
yeah,
members of my family where I'm like, how dare I criticize other people with privilege and not use my own to defend people, right? Like,
sure.
trans black women are the most marginalized group in this country and around the world. So that's, for me, I'm like, oh, you have to like go super hard for them, amplify them when you can, do what you can. So I hear you on that.
I agree. I think if you're not using you know, we're all privileged in our own way if we don't have to worry about, you know, because we're not, because I'm not trans, because I'm not black, I have a privilege that those people don't. And I think absolutely right. Like, no matter what background you are, there's always another group of people who's, you know, who's fighting. And I think if you
Yeah.
go out of your way to at least acknowledge the fact that, oh, wow, I never even thought about that, or oh, I can't even imagine what it's like to hear a police siren and feel like, oh God, I have to fear for my life.
Yeah.
Just, it's powerful to come to that realization. I've had people reach out to me after doing lives and they're talking to me and they're like, it's interesting. I've realized who my real friends during that. And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, have you experienced this? And you know, my friend was telling me yesterday, she's like, yeah, I grew up in a really small white town, and there's just such, these people have such a limited view on things. And yeah, so I just think obviously this movement almost like weeds out the good from the bad people in a sense. You're like, oh, I see what side you're on.
Yeah.
I want to be on the right side, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I think to comment on, like, as you're saying certain things, I have like certain nuggets in my head. To comment on that, you know, it's interesting because I said this the other day, you have people like with Donald Trump's existence, there's a lot of people like resist, fight Trump, right?
Sure.
And now you have certain people resist, like people who I like actually followed, and they're like, yeah, resist, but I have to go to Whole Foods, so can you guys march that way?
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, so it's like, as long as it benefits white people as well, but if it doesn't, yeah, you know. and, and I, yeah, and I think the other thing you mentioned, mental health. You know, I was just saying this a few minutes ago. Like, there's sirens everywhere in New York City. I imagine you're probably in Cali, right?
Yeah, I'm in LA.
Yeah, there's sirens everywhere in New York right now. I mean, like, you can hear it from no matter where you live. So I think I broke up there. But yeah, no matter where you live, you can hear sirens, and it's the most triggering thing I've ever dealt with in my life because you know it feels like Handmaid's Tale or something. It's like you never know if they're gonna come upstairs into your house, especially if you're like outspoken online or you know whatever. And it's bad for the mental health, right? Like as like yourself, I'm someone who likes to focus on mental health. I think that's deeply important, especially for people who are on the margins, black and brown people who, from the time that you're born, you have to automatically live with this like PTSD, right? You know, every single day that I leave, I'm like, will it be a cop or will it be, you know, some person who just thought I looked dangerous? You know, outside of even being killed, like, will I not get a job today? Will I not, you know, this and that and the third? And what that does to the psyche, right? It's like we're living in a moment with COVID-19.
Yeah.
You know, like actually, I'll just give you a like I'll explain something like that's like pretty crazy, right? So like 2020, I'm writing this thing on 2020, and when the year started, I started the year in Europe. My fiance and I celebrating our birthdays, and the moment that we got back, I found out Kobe Bryant was gone, right? And you know, Kobe had a very interesting past, and you know, there's mixed things to it. But in terms of being a basketball player solely, he was an idol for millions of people around the world, right? And especially young black kids, he was like our Michael Jordan-esque figure.
Sure.
So finding out that he was gone in such a tragic way with his daughter, nonetheless, and his other families was absolutely devastating for me. Like and it was the day before my birthday, and I spent my birthday just heartbroken.
Yeah.
So, you know, you slowly come out of that, and then I was working with the Warren campaign and, you know, going out there and you should vote for Warren and then you should vote for Bernie after that and vote for anyone who wants to combat white supremacy, free healthcare and all these things. No, we don't want that. So I'm like, oh, heartbroken again. This is all still the beginning of 2020. Then COVID-19 hits and, you know, it disproportionately impacts black and brown communities. So now I have all these people in my life who are dealing with the hardship of it. So I say, okay, great. I'm going to start a campaign and raise money for people. So I do that. And now, you know, you have all these white people like, why didn't you help me? I'm like, I'm trying, right? And this happens, and I'm going through all these different things. My
Yeah.
uncle passes away,
Oh God.
right? Like, my uncle
Yeah.
passes away, and I'm trying to process that. And as I'm processing that, Ahmaud Arbery is killed, right? So I'm like, okay, we're gonna go camping. So my fiance, my little cousin, and his friend, we went camping just to get away, get some air, away from COVID, away from everybody, just to get our minds together. We after camping for the weekend, we finally leave, you know, the woods, and we get service. We find out, oh, white woman calls cop on black man in Central Park
Yeah.
for walking while she's walking her dog, and he's bird watching.
Yeah.
Okay, 20 minutes later, police kneel on black man's neck and murder him.
Yeah.
And you know, there's never really a moment to catch a breath, you know, in that mental health space, you know. So I think that that's important that you did mention that, because I think so many people are grappling with so much. And I think even for myself, while I'm out here now, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll protest, and I guess I'll fight, and I guess I'll use my platform. And I'm like, every day, like, when's the moment that you're going to break?
Yeah.
It's so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the rest, the opposite of the rest. Okay. Yeah. Good. But we got a lot. We still got a lot going on. Yeah. Still got a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's just, it's a lot. And so how are you? 'Cause I mean, again, you have this large platform, and with that large platform and celebrity life, you have a lot of expectations, I imagine. You know, you exist in this big space where right now you have 15,000 people watching what you're saying. So how is that and your mental health during this moment?
During this moment, I mean, I feel like I almost just I can't complain because this moment is so not about me.
Mm,
It's how I feel. I feel like whatever energy right now, I also think it's I mean, it's strange that the world's kind of at a standstill because of COVID. It kind of gives everyone an opportunity. I think people were craving feeling united with other people, obviously because of COVID. We all felt isolated. And this is like, what's the opposite of isolation? Protest with thousands and thousands of people. And
right.
to be honest, I don't know if this would have happened if COVID wasn't happening, because for some reason, I mean, it gave us a chance, all of us online, to kind of turn to each other. Clearly, I'm not saying COVID was a blessing, but what did come of it was an opportunity for all of us to kind of look at each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're staring at our phones all day. We're inevitably looking at what the world is doing.
Yeah.
Blind eye, in a way, you know, if you're going to bad situation, try and find light in it. I do think that that was the good that came of this, is it really caused a unified group of people. Like, we're done with this. We're gonna fight this now. Now's our time to do it. People are listening, and people are listening. Whereas, you know, if the life was still going on, it would be easier more.
Yeah. No, I completely disagree with that. I think that it's kind of like the perfect storm of things had to exist for this moment to take place,
Yeah,
right? It's like
sure.
there's just so much there, and I think now we're in this really interesting moment, which I don't know how to navigate, where a lot of people are engaged and a lot of white people are engaged, and that's awesome. But you know, there's like this influx of like white people like, hey, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? I'm trying to learn.
Sure.
And you know what the conversation is on the other side, especially amongst black people right now, at least in like a activist and writer space, whatever, is how do we make sure that white people are listening to the right black people,
Okay.
right? And I think that that's interesting, because there are a lot of black people. Well, one, I would say listen to other black people about other black people. Because there's some lists that I've seen come out, for instance, of like support this organization, and all of us are like, they're stealing money, or like support this one person, and we're like, we all hate that person, right?
Sure.
Or there's a history of like misogyny, or there's things like that. That person's homophobic, So that's been something that we've been trying to talk amongst ourselves about, like how to steer white people in the right direction
Yeah.
for information, progressive action and agenda and things like that.
Yeah.
As I imagine you're getting things from all sorts of directions on like amplify this person, amplify that
Yeah.
person.
I honestly, like, people, I was, send me activists to look at, like, who
Yeah.
I talk to, and I've sent a lot of people, and it's like, I'm like, oh, this person's a model, and I'm like, okay, that's great, good for them, like, they're gorgeous. I don't know if they're gonna really add to the conversation in the way that I'm looking for right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Want to hear from activists and from people who are authors and really have something to say about this issue in particular. And so, I mean, yeah, I guess that's why I'm like trying to talk to the right people, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that so far you've talked to amazing people. I actually watched the one last night with Samuel, and I saw I forget how to pronounce it. Tindira, is it?
Kanidra and Amanda.
Kanidra. Oh, Emmanuel Acho. Sorry, I called him Samuel. Yeah, I watched part of that, and he's doing phenomenal work, and Kanidra's doing great work as well. I think we follow each other on Twitter or something like that. So you've definitely, chosen really good people so far. Do you have anybody in mind next?
I do. I have a bunch of people that I'm still. I've been sent a lot of recommendations of It's like they're calling Little Miss Flint. Is that what they're calling?
Oh, she is. So I'm actually on a panel of her tomorrow, as a matter
Yeah,
of fact. Yeah,
or something crazy like.
she's so awesome. She's been raising money and getting water and supplies to Flint since she was like
Oh my.
5 or something
Oh,
like that. I'm just making that up, but like since she was like a kid, right? And her family is so cool. I know all of them. When you do speak to her, tell her Fred said, hey, we're doing a panel on racism for like the youth tomorrow,
oh,
which I think is so awesome. There's this young girl named Chloe Cares who's hosting it. She's another young activist, and she's like, I want to get a mixture of adults and kids to talk about what's happening right now because we can't protest because we're too young. And I'm like, yeah, obviously, I
that's
love that.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
honored to talk to her. I have a couple other people that are messaging me. It's a matter of kind of working out schedules, but I've been so like I'm so down for it. I'm like, you're down? Great, let's do it. Hop on Instagram right now, and I know it's kind of intimidating and weird to just have a conversation about race in front of however many thousand people care to watch, but it really is. It just makes a difference because it's keeping the conversation going, and I think I'm learning something every time I'm talking to someone on here. It's just important to be so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time to do
Yeah.
it, put yourself out there and talk about it. I really.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, you having me on. And I guess I have one last question for you, and then I'm going to jump off and probably go eat something. And
Me too.
and make sure you feed the dog too. So,
Yeah, some attention clearly.
so is there something that during all this, whether it be from these conversations or from this moment, that you've learned?
A lot.
Okay.
From our specific conversation, you mean?
Not ours. No,
Oh,
not ours. I'll send you my book or something. There's stuff in there.
please, please. I mean, I think I've come to the realization how important it is to hear Black voices during this time. I think, I think because I'm like, oh, I'm seeing all these Instagram posts from white people. I'm like, that's fine, that's great, but you don't understand. I don't understand the full extent of what it's like to be judged by the color of your skin. So seeing these motivational posts and like it's great, obviously, like that's what you should be doing, it should be sharing, but it's not as impactful as hearing you talk about it, or someone who's actually experiencing this talk about it. It's just like I'm learning a lot from people who are experiencing it firsthand rather than like me sitting in a group full of white people being like, what can we do? Like, let's just listen. I just want to
Yeah.
listen. I really want to listen. I want to sit back and hear everything that anyone wants to tell me about this so I can just learn. And so that's the most important thing out of all this, I think, because it's, yeah, being active and doing stuff and boots on the ground, so important. You also need to know what you're fighting for. You
Yeah.
know, educated about what you're fighting for. And I think a lot of people who are at these protests, I don't know, maybe not, maybe just don't really get it. Like they're like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but there's not really like maybe not a substance there yet. And I think
Yeah.
just talking to you and understanding, talking to people who are actually going through this on a personal level because of the color of their skin, it means so much more than just talking to other privileged people, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's real, and that's kind of what I'll just leave everybody with. Is like that call to action. It's so important to listen to people. You know, if people follow the people who you amplify and people learn from them, this
Yeah.
is not about right now. It's not even about tomorrow. It's not about the next day. It's about the work being years of work, right? And learning, right? Like not every single thing is going to be said in a book. Not every single thing is going to be said in an article. You actually learn from just watching how people exist and the things they go through, right? You know, a lot of people have told me that they've gotten so much about the world just from seeing my stories from my day, right? There's been times that just in my day, I'm like, oh, there goes a cop who is acting, you know, really hostile towards me, and I've been dealing with this since I was 9 years old, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and people like, oh, you didn't write anything, but that one thing that you said on Instagram or Twitter changed my entire perspective. So, you know, that's just, I guess, what I'll leave everybody with. And obviously, I appreciate you and thank you. It's just, you know, do what she's doing. Follow people, learn from people, grow, engage, because it's not just about saying Black Lives Matter. It's about learning what that means. It's about learning what trans lives matter means. It's about learning what believe women means. It's about learning what all these movements actually mean. So,
Yeah. I agree.
yeah. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Have a good
Appreciate it. You
day.
too.
Get your food.
You too.
See you later. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.